Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, on behalf of Dr. Mohammed Al-Ali, CEO of Trans Research and Advisory, I would like to welcome you all to today's event, Prospects for Cooperation in Energy Transition for a Sustainable Future, GCC, Turkey, and Regional Perspectives. We are pleased to have you with us today as we work towards a sustainable future. The Gulf Cooperation Council, Turkey, and nearby regions play a vital role in changing how we use energy. This event explores the potential for collaboration in energy transition, examining shared concerns and opportunities within the GCC, Turkey, and the wider region. By understanding these dynamics, we can uncover pathways for collective action and innovation to address our common environmental goals in the 21st century. I would like now to invite to the stage Dr. Mohammed Al-Ali to deliver the welcoming remarks.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مساء الخير. السيدات والسادة، أيها الحضور الكريم، يسعدني أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في هذه الفعالية العلمية الجديدة التي نعقدها بالتعاون مع شركائنا في المجلس الأطلسي فرع تركيا، وهي تأتي ضمن سلسلة الفعاليات المستمرة التي يشارك بها الترنز للبحوث والاستشارات في مؤتمر الأطراف كوب 28. فعالية اليوم تكتسب أهمية خاصة ليس بسبب الموضوع الذي نناقشه، وهو مفهوم تحول الطاقة الذي يقع في صلب المناقشات الرسمية لمؤتمر الأطراف كوب 28 فحسب، بل لأن مناقشات هذه الندوة العلمية ترتكز على الأفكار الواردة في أول تقرير ينتج بالمشاركة بين ترنز للبحوث والاستشارات والمجلس الأطلسي بتركيا بعنوان آفاق التعاون في مجال تحول الطاقة من أجل مستقبل مستدام دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي وتركيا أيضاً. وأود هنا أن أعبر عن سعادتي بأول ثمرة من ثمار هذا التعاون البحثي البناء بيننا وبين شركائنا في المجلس الأطلسي فرع تركيا، وأؤكد حرصنا في ترنز على مواصلة هذا التعاون والدفع به قدما نحو آفاق أرحب. أيها الحضور الكريم، برغم أن العالم يشهد بوادر تحولات كبرى اقتصادية، اجتماعية، سياسية، فإن التحول في مجال الطاقة يحظى بأهمية خاصة، وذلك لتأثيره الشديد على باقي التحولات العالمية، ولكونه يرتبط ارتباطاً وثيقاً بقضايا الاستدامة البيئية التي تشغل العالم، وتتمحور حولها الاجتماعات الدائرة حالياً في أروقة مدينة إكسبو دبي. ومن منظور إقليمي يحظى هذا التحول بأهمية أكبر لدى كل من تركيا ودول مجلس التعاون الخليجي، إذ يتقاسم الجانبان الأهداف ذاتها المتمثلة في الحد من انبعاثات الكربون وضمان أمن الطاقة وتحفيز النمو الاقتصادي بشكل مستدام، إلى جانب أداء دور فاعل في الجهود العالمية والإقليمية لتعزيز العمل المناخي. ومن هنا تأتي أهمية هذا التقرير والندوة التي نحن بصددها اليوم، التي تحاول استكشاف آفاق الشراكة بين دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي وتركيا في مجال تحول الطاقة وتسريع اعتماد الطاقة النظيفة ومعالجة تغيير المناخ. أيها الحضور الكريم، إذا كان التحول في الطاقة هو القلب النابض لجهود الاستدامة الدولية، فإنه يمكن النظر إلى التعاون الإقليمي بين تركيا ودول الخليج في الاستدامة من زاويتين. الأولى في تسارع الجهود باتجاه الطاقة النظيفة الذي يخلق فرصاً استثمارية واعدة لدول الإقليم، وأيضاً يعزز فرص الاستثمارات البنيوية ويقلل مخاطر التحول بعيداً عن الطاقة الإحفورية إقليمياً. أما الزاوية الثانية فتتمثل في أن التعاون الخليجي التركي في مجال تحول الطاقة عبر تبادل المعرفة وأفضل الممارسات يمكن الجانبين من التعجيل بالتكيف مع المناخ، مما يجعل التحول أكثر كفاءة وفعالية من حيث التكلفة، ويمكن أن يقدم نموذجاً إقليمياً في هذا المجال. مرة أخرى أشكركم جميعاً على الحضور والمشاركة، وأجدد الشكر لشركائنا في أتلانتس كونسل فرع تركيا على هذا التعاون البحثي البناء. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And now let me welcome Ms. Daphne Arslan to start off with her opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mohammed Abdullah Ali and Ambassador Tuncer, it's an honor to have you here today and all distinguished guests. This is a very exciting moment, I think. Just we are here all together in Dubai for a very important gathering. COP28 is being held. I am Daphne Arslan, Senior Director of the Atlantic Council in Turkey and Turkey's Program Center. We are a Washington, D.C. based think tank, and we are very proud that we are, carrying out the most impactful work on Turkey and the region, as well as Turkey and the United States. Climate change, everybody knows that, has no border. It's already beginning to affect our planet. International cooperation at this moment is not an option, but a necessity to mitigate and address this important issue facing all humanity. That's what makes multinational platforms, such as the United Nations Climate Change Conference, absolutely crucial. And I'm very happy that we are part of this conference today. While global leaders pursue long-term plans and solutions, regional cooperation is another promising topic that needs to be exploited. While global leaders, in this spirit, while global leaders also do their own work, we undertook and now launching our joint publication, exploring the prospects of cooperation between Turkey and GCC countries. Turkey and GCC share many of the same challenges posed by climate change and also synergies in the energy sector. Both Turkey and GCC have been aggressively deepening clean energy over the last decade, but there is significantly more potential that can and should be realized and exploited. Turkey, a net energy importer, is seeking greater energy security and independence, while GCC countries, important energy exporters, nonetheless recognizing the importance of diversification and prepare for a decarbonized future to meet 2020-30 to start with goals and definitely eventually 2050 goals. Coming at a time of expanding strategic and economic engagement between Turkey and many GCC countries, I believe this is a very timely topic to exploit and explore. At the Atlantic Council generally, and also in my center, energy is one of our core and critical focus areas. We have had a very large presence at COP this year with a rich variety of events, including Global Energy Forum and programming. This also underscores how seriously we take the challenges facing the energy sector and the threat of climate change. At the Atlantic Council and Atlantic Council in Turkey and Turkey Program Center, we are proud of our long-standing work on clean energy, including the Regional Clean Energy Author Conference we host every other year in Istanbul, bringing together key stakeholders across the wide region from Balkans, Caucasus, Central Asia, and Middle East. For in the next one, we do hope that we are willing to see GCC countries there as well. I would like to thank again Trans Research and Advisory for their excellent cooperation. Again, Dr. Mohammed, thank you very much again for your remarks and participation. I also would like to thank Serhat Süha Çubukçuoğlu and Grady Wilson from our team for their coordination to bring this report into real. This report itself is a great example of cross-regional cooperation between two great entities, Atlantic Council and Trends Research and Advisory. I am very glad that we are here today, so without delay, looking forward to our discussion, which will be starting in seconds, and of course, strongly urge you check our report, which you will be seeing, the barcode on the screens in a moment, which you can also download to your computers and mobile phones. With that pleasure, it is my pleasure to leave the floor to Dr. Serhat Suha Çubukçuoğlu, researcher and senior fellow in the strategic studies at Trends, to moderate our panel, including our panelists. So I would like to welcome again and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Ms. Daphna. Thank you, Ms. Daphna. Kindly scan the QR code as it will lead you to the report. Okay. So without any delay, please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Serhat, the moderator of today's session, who is a senior fellow in strategic studies at Trends Research and Advisory, and our respected speakers, Mr. Eser Ozdel, Ms. Mozel Merzougi, Ms. Malek Öztürk, and Mr. Karim Al-Jindi.
Yes, right next to me. Thank you. Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, dear Ambassador Tunçer, Dr. Mohammed Al-Ali, Defne Hanım, thank you. Thank you for supporting our joint report, for joining our session today on this important occasion at COP28. This year also marks another important occasion. It's the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the UAE and Turkey. So we thought that this report and the event follow-after would add a valuable link to the chain of events, meetings, and reports that we did over the course of this year, and concluded with a positive message to all of the participants, not just in the UAE and Turkey, but across the GCC. We have 4 panelists who contributed to our joint report on prospects in energy transition for a sustainable future, the case of Turkey, GCC, and from a regional perspective. Let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Musa Al-Marzouki, researcher and head of economic section at Trends Research and Advisory. Welcome, Musa. Eser Özdil, non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council in Turkey. Welcome, Eser. Melek Öztürk, principal research consultant at Citerion. Welcome, Melek. And finally, last but not least, Karim Al-Jindi, associate fellow, Environment and Society Center at the Chatham House in London. Thank you. So before we turn to our panelists, before I pass the floor to them, let me just make a few remarks, opening remarks about the importance of COP28, some of the challenges that we face in climate action, and the motivation behind our joint report. To recap on main goals of COP28, we're all gathered here, world leaders, delegates, think tanks, private sector participants, for decision needed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030, and to, of course, reach net zero emissions by 2050. And what have we achieved so far? Let's just quickly go over them. An agreement to triple renewable energy capacity as well as nuclear capacity by 2030, to double energy efficiency improvements by 2030, to cut cooling-related emissions by at least 68% by 2050, And finally, to operationalize mechanisms to support clean energy financing in emerging countries, such as the Loss and Damage Fund and UAE's commitment to contribute $30 billion for renewable investments. So in terms of net zero targets, when we look at our region, the Middle East, we see that both the GCC and Turkey have targets to reach net zero emissions between 2050 and 2060. On one hand, GCC countries demonstrated that it's economically, environmentally, and socially beneficial to invest in clean energy and other carbon mitigation strategies, while Turkey fostered innovative policies to decarbonize energy through market liberalization, public-private partnerships, technology transfer, and financial assistance for green investments. Now, having said that, let's come to some of the motivations behind our report. All these targets and objectives and goals in mind, of course, these are not without challenges. So I can count on maybe 3 challenges confronting us. So challenge number 1 is a shortfall in energy investments globally. So current spending, as we know, is insufficient to mitigate climate change and to adapt to its consequences. I mean, globally, we need about $4.5 trillion a level of funding that must include the private financial sector. Which brings me to the second challenge, which is barriers to private sector financing. In an environment of high interest rates and inflation around the world that create headwinds, there are 2 what we call tragedies. So tragedy 1 is tragedy of commons, which is that investments in climate solutions benefit the society overall, but investors receive only a portion of those benefits directly. And the second tragedy is the tragedy of horizon, which is that investments needed today will pay off only in a distant future. Lastly, but not least, challenge number 3 is perhaps the biggest motivating factor for our research is the working in silos. Yes, developing political relations inevitably reflect on economic cooperation between the GCC and Turkey. Especially in the case of the UAE and Turkey, we saw the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and the Memorandums of Understanding. Examples like the International Holding Company and Kalyon Energy, or AXA and Innova. But as you know, renewable investments hasn't reached a level that's still sufficient, let's say, or a substantial level. It's localized, and each country follows its own climate policies instead of creating this much needed cooperation. So our goal in this report is to contribute to the thinking on how to break these silos and build the momentum of growing economic ties between the GCC countries and Turkey that will bring collective gains in energy transition and increase shared prosperity. Ending my remarks, I will turn to our first panelist, Musa Al-Marzouki. So, Musa, can you talk to us a little bit about how dedicating financial resources to energy efficiency lead to carbon-free industries in the GCC and Turkey?
Thank you, sir.
I think it's not. Yeah. Is it working?
It's working, yeah. Thank you, Sir Hat, for your introduction. And first of all, I'd like to thank the team at Trends and the team in the Atlantic Council in Turkey for organizing this amazing session. It couldn't have been at a perfect time or a perfect circumstances than being at COP28 here today. So the prospects of cooperation for a sustainable future between the GCC and Turkey center on increasing adaptation of renewable energy, offshore wind, solar energy, and most importantly, nuclear power. Turkey has been an energy-dependent country and enjoys a constant growing market. There is an opportunity for these regional actors, the GCC and Turkey, to work together, spearhead the region's transition to clean energy, and make joint efforts towards meeting their climate goals. There is an opportunity in the region to reach energy transition that is entirely inclusive, that is entirely responsive, flexible, and digital. Since we live in an ever-globalized world, digitalization is inevitable. So why not implement it in the transition from fossil fuels to cleaner energy? So the countries and the regions really understand that and appreciate the importance of adopting renewable energy. And they can do that by investing. And investing is the key word you're going to hear from all the speakers, I guess, today, that is feasible to the productive projects. Notably, as Serhat previously mentioned, last year in February of 2022, when President Erdogan visited the United Arab Emirates, the UAE and Turkey have both signed multiple MOUs and agreements on collaborations on environmental issues. The two nations, the UAE and Turkey, decided to work together to support the global transition to climate neutrality. So the Gulf nations face and still face deplete fresh water. As everyone knows, the region is mostly desert, so we have an ever-going crisis of water management and fresh water resources. So within the next 50 years, it should be a top priority for the region to focus on the freshwater resources. So while the temperatures are rising, they are at a soaring rate in the GCC and the Gulf region, as it's 2 to 7 times higher than the global average. Also, it's no surprise that the region is home to 12 out of 17 most world-stressed countries when it comes to water. So when it comes to collaboration between the region and Turkey, we have an example of the Zero Waste Blue project that was signed between the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. And it's signed to aim to keeping gas and water resources free from waste. So let me conclude my talk with that the Emirati Corporation have interested in projects that both benefit the GCC and Turkey, and they costed 1.8 billion dirhams that are committed towards the energy transition.
Thank you very much, Musa, for this overview. Thank you. And that also explains why we joined forces with Trends and Atlantic Council in Turkey to bring these topics around renewables, sustainability, and energy transition into the forefront of the discussions in here at a timely point like this. Thank you, Mozab. So let me turn to Eser. Eser, could you please brief us a little bit on Turkey's energy transition journey and how it fits into the overall, debates and the mission here that we are in today here at COP28? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sriha, for this kind moderation, and I would like to thank Trans Research and Advisory, as well as Atlantic Council for hosting us today. It's a very timely discussion.
Sorry, Eser, I think the microphone doesn't work. Okay. Now it is. Yeah.
Is it working right now? Can you hear me? Okay, so once again, thank you very much for your kind moderation, as well as thank you very much to Trans Research and Advisory, as well as Atlantic Council for hosting us today. It's a very timely discussion, I believe. So I will try to as brief as possible in outlining Turkey's energy transition perspective. I think our current minister, Mr. Alparslan Bayraktar, has written an article back in 2016 about explaining the Turkey's energy transition roadmap. And in this article, he was explaining the 2002 and 2016 as the energy transition 1.0, and then 2016 and 2023 as energy transition 2.0. So basically, his parameters are explaining quite well where Turkey is coming from and where Turkey will continue after 2023. As 2000s, basically, Turkey had one priority in the energy transition roadmap that was roughly supply security plus affordability in the energy prices. So whoever comes as the energy minister, as far as I remember, I saw 4 different energy ministers so far in Turkey because of the long AK Party governments. The day one issue of the whole energy minister was to ensure supply security. That was very critical, especially during the period of Mr. Berat Albayrak, because we have fallen the Russian jet in the Syrian border back in 2015. And basically, the second question was how we can keep as affordable as possible the energy prices. Yeah. So if you look at the policy set of the government, of the AK Party, you can see that after 2002, Turkey launched a very wide privatization policies in order to increase private investments in the energy generation. Then basically, Turkey also launched a very huge privatization movement in the distribution businesses, especially electricity and natural gas distribution segments, in order to distribute all the investments to the private sector, as well as increasing the efficiency as well as the digitalization level. So when it comes to trading segment, also partially electricity trading largely privatized and liberalized. But when it comes to natural gas, that was quite critical, especially not only for the household perspective, but for the industry perspective as well. So this segment still is kept under the hand of the government institution. So between 2002 and 2016, Turkey attracted more than $60 billion investments to energy sector. Most of the private companies invested. So when in 2002, the share of the government on the electricity generation was around 75 to 80%. Right now, it's less than 25%. All distribution businesses are privatized. Only one municipality country, which is İGDAŞ, the Istanbul Gas Distribution Company, is controlled by the municipality. All the energy distribution businesses is also privatized. So, which means that Turkey paid high attention to bring private sector to the game in the first 14 and 15 years of the AK Party government. Between 2016 and 2023, which is called Energy Transition 2.0, basically investments to ensure further supply security was the primary area, multiplied with localization and domestic production. So the key pillar of this period was the renewable energy zones policies, which attracted huge Turkish and foreign investors to renewable energy production plus domestic equipment production. Basically, as you said, that between the Turkish and UAE joint venture right now is the biggest producer in Turkey for solar in Konya region. They have established capacities almost 1.2 gigawatt, which is far more the largest power plant in Turkey for the solar perspective. And then actually, from the wind perspective, also we have established the biggest wind farm in Turkey, which is also 1 gigawatt. So between 2014 and 2023, thanks to these policies, total installed capacity in solar and wind doubled. So at that time, the installed capacity was around 7 to 8 gigawatt. Right now, the installed capacity, both in solar and wind, exceeded 20 gigawatts in Turkey, which is making 20% of the all installed capacity. So that's quite a huge number. And if you multiply these production numbers with the hydro power plants, Turkey is covering almost 45% of the electricity demand from renewables. This is far more better than the most of the European countries, honestly speaking, and this is perfectly very good. So what Turkey will do after 2023, and basically what kind of opportunities that we will see here. So you know that there is a very famous concept, which is to define energy transition to low carbon economies. This is 4D, which this is called as a 4D: decarbonization, decentralization, digitalization, and diversity. So especially when it comes to these four main principles, I cannot say that no country is an island. Because when it comes to digitalization, we need to rely on the technologies of each other. When it comes to decentralization, we need to rely on the experiences of each other. When it comes to diversity, we need to rely on our experiences. So that's why what Turkey is trying to do after 2023, the first, Turkey wants to decrease dependency level to foreign imported energy resources, basically oil and gas. So that's why Turkey wants to increase further the installed capacity of the renewable power plant. And Turkish National Energy Plan outlines that until 2035, we will add another almost 90 gigawatt new installed capacity in the electricity generation, and 65 gigawatt will come from the renewables. So in Turkey, we need to attract at least another $40 to $45 billion of investment to renewable energy generation. Then basically Turkey wants to have 5 gigawatt established electrolyzer capacity in hydrogen production because Turkey doesn't see itself only a good opportunity, a good location to produce hydrogen or ammonia, also a good trading hub and transit route for the green hydrogen and ammonia to be pursued in the Gulf region and the Middle East. So that's why Turkey wants to put together all the value chain thanks to its geographical location as well. So that's why what I see, as well as what I have written in my paper. So basically, if you want to go fast, we need to go alone. But if you want to go further, we should be together. So that's why in the future, I believe that thanks to good financial capabilities of the GCC countries and good reputation and good experiences of the Turkish private sector, we can put together the capabilities of these two countries together, and we can create new success stories in the energy transition, both in Turkey, both in the region. So I will stop here, and we will continue with the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Eser, for this overview on comparative advantages and synergies between the GCC and Turkey. So let me switch gears and turn to Melek. Could you talk to us a little bit about synergy between electric mobility and renewable energy? Where do we see the electric vehicle partnership going forward in here? Over to you.
Thank you, Suha. It's great to be here, and thank you for the great event. And I would like to start with the transportation and how it's contributing to the carbon emissions in Turkey. For example, Turkey's around 17% is coming from the transportation, whereas for Saudi Arabia and UAE, it's the second and the third largest contributor to the emissions, which shows us a significant, actually, amount of effort needs to be done with these areas, especially in the transportation. For example, while we are looking into consideration, we are seeing that in Turkey, the electric vehicles have been increasing at a really fast pace, around like 200% growth in the last 3 years. So we are seeing a really high demand, but it's also, we have to note that most of them are currently imported vehicles. However, the Turkey is also producing its own electric vehicle called TOG, and it's also in the market, which we are seeing it's going to grow even further. And when we are comparing it to the GCC countries, we are not only seeing also there is an uptake there, but we are seeing another manufacturing hub is being developed in Dubai, and also Saudi Arabia is following this trend with importing actually 14,000 vehicles to the country because there is no manufacturing there. And also we are seeing another effort in Qatar to build their own vehicle called Eco Transit. So considering all these factors, we are going to see in the next few years that there is a high demand there. But what the most important thing is how these electric vehicles are being fed. Because if it's being fed from the fossil fuels or coal, it's not going to be possible to reach net zero in the transportation sector. So then it's actually integrating us to the renewable energy that we are talking about. And the Turkey is actually right now having a high percentage of renewable energy in terms of transition, around 50%, but it doesn't only involve the solar and wind, but also geothermal energy and hydropower as well. And we believe that Turkey is going to reach its targets by 2030. And we are seeing also another fast growth in the UAE and Saudi Arabia with their construction of the large solar parks. I think that they are going to also going in a fast pace, even though their numbers are low currently, but they are going to have a larger capacity to reach those. And I'd like to also bind these renewable energy to how to achieve these renewable energies in collaboration areas. There is also the energy storage systems comes into place here, because without the energy storage systems, it's impossible to actually store the solar or wind-powered energy in the sites. So it's actually one of the most new topics, and most new, while saying most new, it's not the technology is not there, but it's the regulations is just started. For example, in Turkey, there's a mandate if you're going to build a renewable solar or wind park, you have to build also energy storage with the same capacity, which is also mandating these industries to not also benefit to the grid, but also to benefit to and self-sufficient, networking in terms of the grid infrastructure. But we are seeing a high demand in terms of, especially in the companies and the private sector, to this licensing. But the issue is that due to the high inflation and the current economic situation in Turkey, we are seeing the financial investments are a little bit of delaying these investments. So it's really important to collaborate in that sense with the GCC countries. And another area of when we look at the transportation is that the technology in the batteries, and we are seeing in the globally, the EV production is becoming really local and domestically produced. So this is really becoming important for Turkey and the GCC countries as well. And both regions are really rich in their resources, such as sodium and also hydrogen we are talking about, especially in the battery chemistry. We are looking at the largest market is right now lithium, which is a scarce earth material. And there has to be another technology that needs to be replaced that can be sourced from local resources, such as sodium, and Turkey and the GCC countries are great in that sense. And also, as we are talking about, the clean hydrogen is really important. It's also one of the areas that two countries and two regions actually can collaborate in that regard. But that's actually a really high intensive need for infrastructure altogether. But all these, if we were to combine all these different sustainability practices, I think we are going to see more decentralized approaches in different industries as well as the residential areas as well. And currently we are seeing an uptake towards the grid and utility industry, but I think it's going to move forward to more private companies who are being self-sufficient in terms of also feeding their energy, and it will move towards the residential areas as well.
Thank you, Melek, for your remarks. Yeah. You touched upon some of the areas, niche areas in electric mobility and resources, and maybe the competition also in getting access to these resources, which takes me to Karim El-Gandi. We talked about energy transition and sustainability, Karim. Could you take us a little bit through the geopolitical aspects of it, like energy security, and what are some of the ways that GCC and Turkey could cooperate to, or say, like a more secure energy future, considering the energy trilemma, the sustainability, affordability, and reliability? How can we do that?
Sure. So before I do that, I think energy security is extremely important, but it's not important for all parties involved in this collaboration. In order to explain this, I have to explain how the energy transition developed in these two very large economic blocks in the region. So what we have is two very large regions economically, the GCC and Turkey, and they have both came very late to the energy transition. And despite that, they all have very aggressive, very fast plans to move ahead, specifically on renewables. In the GCC, that would specifically be the UAE and Saudi Arabia. They're both driven by economic factors. There's obviously climate commitments in place, both in parts of the GCC. Most of the GCC has decarbonization plans by 2050 or mid-century, except for Qatar, but Turkey obviously has the plan for 2053. But overall, it's driven by economics. And in a way, that can create those conditions for possible collaboration. In order to do that, I need to explain that the drivers are a little bit different. Turkey's concerns for energy transition are mostly about its energy independence, its energy security. Every framing, every way in which the officials talk about energy, even in the climate sphere, it's always framed in those terms. the rate at which electricity demand has been growing in Turkey is just unbelievable. It's doubled. Electricity has doubled in the last 20 years. The energy has doubled, tripled in the last 30 years. And so far, despite all of the efforts, it's 80% dependent on imports, which are largely, as Esther pointed out, is an oil and gas situation. So it's mostly an energy security driven, but obviously the 2053 target is still in the background. And what is Turkey doing about this? Well, it's ramping up its renewables. The solar is doing okay. The hydro has reached more or less peak. I mean, there's not much sites that they could develop any further, and wind is doing very well. And there's some geothermal going on as well. And the plans are obviously to move, at the moment its capacity is around 52% of electricity generation, to move to 65 by 2035, I believe, and it will sort of peak at around 69% by the middle of the century. Of course, there's a push towards nuclear, which is, I understand, is developed by Rosatom, and surely that queue will come online quite soon. And there's this interest, very budding interest in hydrogen that only came out recently. As 2 years ago, Turkey didn't have any plans or any ideas about hydrogen, but now it's very interested and it has very ambitious plans for generation capacity, around 10 million, which is equivalent to all of Europe's import demands for hydrogen. Also, Turkey's renewable energy targets around 52 gigawatts, and for solar alone, and for wind, the additional targets around 20 to 30 gigawatts. Just to put that in perspective, Saudi Arabia has plans for roughly the same time frame of around 60. So we're talking roughly the same ambitions, and both of them are extremely difficult to achieve in those time frames. What is the Gulf doing? Well, the Gulf comes from a very different approach. The issue in the Gulf is never energy security. It's making sure that the domestic demand is under control, that the decarbonization is just to keep the domestic demand under control. Because at one point it looked at the trajectory, especially in Saudi, was going to end up with Saudi becoming an importer and basically throwing oil down the drain, and that's not sustainable. So decarbonize at home, but export every drop of oil, every molecule that can be exported, and use that revenue to support diversification. And I think that cycle is very different from what we're talking about. But so, in a way, all of this is to ensure that tourism works, industrialization works, and also new energy sectors come into play as well, such as hydrogen. And if I may point out, the UAE and Saudi Arabia build on an extensive energy background that supports that hydrogen infrastructure. The know-how within the sectors here in the region is quite exceptional. And of course, the UAE has great plans to reach, I understand, 30% by 2031 of its grid from renewables, and Saudi Arabia has the almost unachievable goal of reaching 50% within the next 7 years. But anything near 50% would be great. The UAE also, I understand, wants to capture 25% of all traded hydrogen in the world by 2030 or thereabouts. So how could they collaborate? So I can see a number of scenarios in which that collaboration can happen. One is Turkey has developed technical capability on solar and wind, which can certainly be shared with the GCC, although the GCC knows how to do very large-scale solar. Turkey has its advantage in terms of its ability to connect to the EU hydrogen backbone, which means it can export hydrogen to Europe via pipeline, which technically is far superior than anything that goes on ships. So the point you made about hubs, I think Turkey, just by its own geography, carries that advantage compared to any other alternative. And then the issue of connectivity. If you have very high intermittency as a result of rolling out massive renewable energy projects on both of those regions, that good interconnections. I understand Saudi Arabia is developing an interconnector with Iraq. So extending that further into Turkey will ensure that some of this intermittency can be managed, because the load curves are different in these two different regions. And in the experience, of course, in the hydrogen sector that is builds on the fossil fuel experience in the Gulf, can certainly help Turkey exploit or make the best out of its position and out of its ability to feed into the European market or the hydrogen market. Just to make it very, very clear, the hydrogen market is so far is about Germany. So everyone is basically trying to get hydrogen to Germany, you get hydrogen to the EU. The EU was very clear, we wanted to buy 10 million by 2030. Who's going to provide that? And it's a race. You've got countries across the southern neighborhoods. You've got Morocco, Egypt, you've got the UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, and now Turkey are all interested in supplying as much as they could of that. And collaborating, I think, will ensure that you get the best economically viable option to the European markets. And of course, there's the easy thing. So obviously, the GCC can finance some of the renewable energy transition because of the privatization. Can certainly, because we've seen that in the attempts by Masdar to buy a major wind company recently. And of course, collaboration both between businesses and research and development between universities. This would go without saying in any sector, but specifically because they can create quality jobs and create key skills within the younger generation that can benefit both of those two regions. And with that, I will end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you. Thank you, Karim. So what we'll do now is we'll go to each of our panelists, and I'll ask a question to each of them in round, and then we'll pass the microphone to the audience for your comments and questions. And I'd like to ask our panelists to please limit their answer to about 3 minutes so that we can leave time for the audience to also join in. Let me start in the reverse order. So Karim, you talked about some of the energy synergies, maximizing mutual benefits about these sectors. Now, there are competing, theories, thoughts on whether, economics follows politics or politics follows economics. And how do you see this from a GCC Turkey angle? Can this cooperation in energy security or energy partnership, renewable and clean energy investment, spur regional stability, reduce geopolitical complexities, and create new markets for energy production?
Sure. Yeah, I think in this case it's a case of politics following economics, and I think if you have joint projects, that would certainly develop an environment of collaboration. If you create joint infrastructure in a way similar to the steel and coal arrangement in the old days of the EU, creates this interdependency. And once you create interdependency, the cost of tensions becomes higher, and so you basically lay the ground for making it much harder in the future of having geopolitical tensions between different regions. And we've seen with the reconciliation recently across the MENA region, if you include Turkey into that, that has certainly enabled some of this. But you need to build infrastructure that would keep that in the long term and reduce the risks of a reversal that could happen in the future. And financing, of course, is an additional factor in which you can have money on the ground, so you've got skin in the game by the different factors. I don't want to fall into the cliche of a GCC finance projects. I think that should go in both directions, given that in some cases it's a technical expertise from the GCC that can support projects in Turkey. And of course, people-to-people collaboration. So that's where the R&D part will fall in.
One of the most important aspects, and on this occasion, especially being face-to-face together here, is a much valued occasion. Thank you. So Melek, let me turn to you. We talked about electrification, and let's touch a little bit on carbon dioxide emissions. So where do Turkey and GCC countries stand on carbon dioxide reducing emissions as part of the transformation of and electrification of their transport networks, and how can they collaborate in this regard? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Turkey. Let's start with Turkey and how they're approaching the carbon emissions in terms of transportation. Is actually first they're reducing the high taxes, which is normally implied on the non-EV vehicles. We are calling it internal combustion engine, the ICE vehicles in short. So normally there is a, let's say, 60% to 200% tax rate in Turkey currently being applied to the ICE vehicles, while right now for EVs it's as low as 10 to 60% within the same range, which is a great initiative and incentive for people to start buying also EVs. Similarly, in the Dubai government also set a target to have 30% of their government fleet to be EVs as well. So they are starting from a more purchase side and funding the vehicles, which is also another approach that we are seeing in this area. And we will also, in Turkey, electricity is actually advantageous over petroleum prices as well, we're considering, and there is an actual economic benefit to the users. And we are actually seeing hopefully to see a similar approach in the GCC countries as well. And because there's also a reduction for the fuel prices here, which is expected to also transition towards the EVs slowly without actually jeopardizing the profitability and the economic well-being. And the collaboration areas are definitely, I'm seeing in the batteries, which touches upon which actually there is a great business model in terms of circularity, that you can actually use the vehicle batteries in the energy storage systems as well, because they are in the cars, there is a need for 80% of capacity, very high quality batteries are needed, but it's not the case for the stationary batteries that we are talking in the energy storage systems. So I think there needs to be also a scalability, and the more the vehicles are being pushed, there will be more need for the batteries in the energy storage systems, and then we will reach together the profitability in each industries and in each region. So larger and mass production is the key, I think.
Thank you. A quick question on that one. So in Abu Dhabi, for instance, we see Tesla taxis. How close are we to see similar type of arrangements in Turkey?
There is actually blue taxis in Turkey also. It's
Okay.
not Tesla, but
Maybe TOG.
TOG is also developing the same. And I think we will see more, but there needs to be more incentives given to the taxi drivers to purchase those vehicles as well.
Okay, thank you. Eser, let me turn to you. Hydrogen, it's a much discussed topic. Almost all of us touched upon it. So could you tell us how can the GCC and Turkey cooperate in hydrogen production and export? What opportunities are there in the $30 billion investment that the UAE has announced? Please.
Well, I see position of Turkey on hydrogen as cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Why I say cautiously optimistic? Because if you look at the recent national energy plan, the target of Turkey is to have 5 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity as of 2035. So this is not that huge ambitious plan. But if we go to 2050, basically Turkey wants to have 50 gigawatts of installed electrolyzer capacity, because when I talked to the bureaucrats and the Minister of Energy, they consider that the scale of economics on hydrogen production will be seen after 2030s, I mean the mid-2030s. Still, hydrogen production is quite expensive, as well as if you look at hydrogen prices, they are not very competitive versus natural gas prices, because hydrogen is considered mostly as an industrial process fuel rather than fueling our houses. When it comes to the blending hydrogen to natural gas, to a certain extent, like 10 to 15%, basically all the technical feasibility studies are proving that the blending like 10 to 15% hydrogen to Turkish natural gas distribution grid is affordable. The same in the European as well. Again, that's going to increase the cost of the natural gas to the end users. So that's why Turkey wants to work on the hydrogen technologies. Turkey wants to have capability to produce hydrogen. Turkey wants to be a kind of a transit plus trading hub in hydrogen transportation trading between GCC, Middle East to European countries. This is clear. But basically, what I see, the acceleration of the investments to hydrogen in Turkey probably is going to be after 2035. So when it comes to your specific question, will hydrogen take a certain share from this $30 billion of investment package? As of now, we don't know, because all these agreements are at the memorandum of understanding stage. So we know from the market that some of the UAE companies are heavily looking for investment opportunities in Turkey. Some of them we are in talk, basically. But still, I can say that these are in the feasibility or market research level. So probably we will need a couple of years to see the materialization of these investment plans. However, in the meantime, we may expect some mergers and acquisitions between Turkish and UAE or between Turkish and Gulf companies. This is always open opportunity.
Thank you, Asar. Well said. And Musa, let me turn to you for our last question. Now, youth and innovation is a major topic here in the UAE. We see it almost on a daily basis, and here at Trends, we put special emphasis on education and technological skills. So I wonder how technology and innovation can play a role in facilitating energy transition cooperation between the GCC and Turkey. Could you please share your thoughts on this?
Sure, Sarhat. So before moving to the...
I think it's on, yeah.
So before moving to the technology part, excuse me, I'm going to be a bit biased here. As a young researcher myself, I believe the first step of cooperation between nations is literally through research. Because when you exchange this knowledge between nations, you're looking at the knowledge transfer towards the future, whether it's in energy, whether it's in technology. And since we are talking about energy transition, it's a very vital step for nations to invest in their research facilities. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Musa. Let me open up the floor to questions and comments from the audience. Does anyone want to volunteer? Yes, please. And if you can please introduce yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Volkan Yiğit from Istanbul, Turkey, energy market consultant. So basically, we're talking about investment feasibilities and etc. But I want to open another topic here. Maybe Karim could answer that with Eser as well. What about the market liberalization? Because Turkey has vast amount of experience in liberalizing its market, energy markets, mainly electricity markets, going onto a spot market with taking risks, moving further away from subsidies or feed-in tariffs. So do you think the GCC countries will open an era for such developments, for such cooperation areas, perhaps in the coming years?
Sorry, if I understood your question correctly, are you suggesting that the GCC markets would adopt a similar model to the Turkish
electricity market, mostly?
Electricity market. Well, the GCC has its own arrangements, and in some cases you get companies like Aqua Power or Masdar who could sell to the grid under feed-in tariff or net metering schemes. Obviously not to the same level as you have in Turkey, where it becomes highly competitive.
Exactly.
But would it go in the same direction? I'm not sure it will end up going in the same direction. I think the nature of the market is different, and I wouldn't go as far. But I would hand over to Eser, who I think understands the energy market better than I do.
Eser, would you like to comment?
Well, we are always discussing this issue with Volkan in Turkey, so I don't want to bother you here in this room. But basically, the thing is that as far as I know, structurally and fundamentally, markets are quite different in Turkey and GCC countries. Because in Turkey, we have more than 2,000 different of power plants owned by hundreds or 200 different family or investment groups. Basically, the energy production is a very diverse business in Turkey. So that's why this power plants should be competitive in every single aspect, from the marginal price perspective till efficiency, because of the source type. The source type also is very various in Turkey. We have hydros, we have coal, we have natural gas, we have solar, we have wind, we have biomass, we have various types of different energy production resources. That's why the fuel types, power plant types are quite competitive itself. But here in the GCC, this is not much diversified in the current businesses. As well as the ownership structure is quite different in Turkey and the GCC countries as well. Yeah. So that's why basically I am not expecting to see that huge level liberalization plus competition in GCC markets. However, what we know that since the cost of the power plants are decreasing, especially in the renewable side, I believe that the cost of the electricity and the decarbonization level also will be further decreased in GCC countries. So that's why the global developments, global technological developments also will bring the efficiency itself to the GCC countries as well in terms of pricing.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, please. Yeah, Ambassador Tugay Tunçer, Your Excellency.
Yeah, I have. I want to raise one issue. I want to put one issue into the picture, actually, of energy transition and cooperation with the GCC, and then I have a question. The issue is a project which goes through Iraq. It is called the development project. Yeah. Currently, we are working with the GCC countries, not GCC, sorry, with Qatar and the UAE, and very much with the UAE on realizing this project. It is a project that connects the Gulf with Turkey through Iraq, through the south part of Iraq, and it goes to the Turkish border and beyond from Turkey to Europe. Because once you are in Turkey, you can connect. You are already connected to Europe in many terms. So it's not a transport corridor only. It is also a corridor of energy transmitting lines. So, and this is something that UAE attaches and the Gulf attaches a lot of importance on, as well as Turkey, and we are working on it with the Iraqi leadership as well. That's the issue, that's the point I wanted to highlight. I think it has an importance on this topic. And second is hydrogen. I guess Eser mentioned this, exporting hydrogen through Turkey, from Turkey to Europe, as well as becoming a hub on hydrogen. And Karim as well mentioned this. When you talk about hydrogen hub as Turkey, what is? How do you say that? I mean, how do you? What's the transmitting line? Is it? Are you going to do it through electrical lines, exporting the, or is it through pipelines? I mean, maybe it's a. I'm not knowledgeable on this. That's why.
That's fairly straightforward. So hydrogen is transferred as molecules, either separately through a dedicated pipeline, or it's blended within the natural gas pipelines, which currently exist between Turkey and the rest of Europe. There's a limit to how much hydrogen you could blend within the natural gas before it blows up. So you don't normally do too much of that. So the advantage of pipeline and being connected to the consumers, ideally the best thing to do with hydrogen is to generate it next to the factories you're going to use it in, right? That's the best thing to do. If you the next best thing would be to put it on a pipeline and get it there, and that would be an economically feasible version, to have the same level of energy and temperature that you want for heavy industries, especially German heavy industries, or for freight, but without the losses that you could incur. If you have to put it on ships, hydrogen takes a lot of space, so you end up with about a quarter of what you would carry in terms of pure energy that you would have done otherwise if it was natural gas. And there's losses in the transmit to hydrogen and back out. And there's also overall the losses in conversions and the requirements for cooling, which is far more than any cooling that would happen on LNG. You can't use the same ships for LNG, so you have to get new ships that are even more cooled. Overall, all of those make hydrogen not as economically viable if you do it on ships. It's still doable, and I'm sure there's a customer out there that would want to buy it this way, but pipelines are a much straightforward option. The options that you were speaking of here, you could either generate renewables somewhere and ship the electricity to the hub, and then from the hub you could take it to the customers in Europe. You could use gas, so you could transfer gas and then capture the carbon somewhere, and then using the conversion methods, capture the carbon, and then take the hydrogen to Europe, which is blue hydrogen. So the first one would be green hydrogen, the second one would be blue hydrogen. And in both of those options, Turkey would be a sensible place because of where its connection is, or its proximity to the hydrogen backbone, the European hydrogen backbone, which it's not connected to yet, but the European Union has suggested it might be a good idea to connect to it or offered that possibility going forward.
I think, Your Excellency, you had another question. So the first one is this, the CONI. Okay, fine. Let me add to that. So would it be compatible or let's say, would it complement, would Turkey's hydrogen capacity complement the GCCs, or would they be competitors toward the European market? Karim.
So the numbers are about 25 million tons by the looks of it, which I think was more than Europe needs. So perhaps in the short term, up to 2030, these are old numbers in 2050, but Europe in the short term needs about 10. So okay. I think there's potential for up to 2030 for both of them getting together and providing enough.
Okay.
Moving forward, I don't know how much Europe would want. So maybe new markets will need to be explored.
All right. Thank you, Karim. Defne Hanım, please, over to you.
First of all, Serhat, great moderation, congratulations, and this has been a great panel. My question will go to Musa. Musa, I think in your last remark, you pointed on underlined a very important topic about, just the corporation should also be in research and, area. So can you, let's expand this a bit, just so thinking out of the box. So are you suggesting maybe to build technology zones coming together, GCC and Turkey, or exchanging students, or just so building research hubs, just in the region, coming all together, all the countries that will help the industry and all countries in the region to lead this, cooperation. So if you can expand, it will be great. Thank you.
Yeah, you've covered it when it comes.
I think it's on.
So you covered it when it comes to exchange of students, researchers, and I mean one of the first steps taken is me working with the Atlantic Council in Turkey. So yeah, why not invest in students? Why not invest in research centers? There are already hundreds of research centers around the region. Well, not in the UAE. So why not invest towards these researchers? And yeah, there are some student exchange programs, so why not implement them when it comes to energy and the energy sector as well? So that was my point, to be exact.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you for the session. It was really informative. I'm a geopolitical risk analyst and I cover the MENA region. My question is for Mr. Karim. I know you mentioned that Turkey's geographical location is quite useful for pitching it as a collaborative approach for exporting energy. There's an IMEC corridor that is proposed that is going to connect from Mumbai to all the way to Europe using the Middle East region without Turkey being included. It's a long-term project. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. But do you suppose that such long-term plans may pose as huge challenges for collaboration between Turkey and GCC? Or do you think that there's still high scope for Turkey to pitch itself as a great geographical, leverage that it has right now?
Good question.
So I think you're referring to the India, GCC, Mediterranean connection. The option we were talking about does not include India. So I suppose there are different projects that are doing different things. I personally don't fully understand how you could put energy on a boat and then turn them on trains, and then from trains turn them back on boats. I think I see a lot of losses in that, and I see trains as having limited carrying capacity. So it would make more sense to put them on large containers that would take them all the way. I'm yet to be convinced that doing those two switches is more efficient, but I'm sure someone else has looked at the numbers more closely.
Yeah. Anyone would like to comment on that? I think that intermodal transport mechanism makes it somewhat risky or prone to geopolitical risk as well. But it is nevertheless an alternative and worth to be discussed. But as we discussed, there is another way that may go up further north through Iraq, GCC, as you and I were discussing before the session, Karim, whether the rail link can be expanded and extended as an alternative to the IMEC corridor. With that, let me quickly summarize some of our points. So GCC-Turkey partnership in renewable clean energy investments holds immense potential for a sustainable clean energy future, offering economic, environmental, and social benefits to all of us. Turkey and the GCC share opportunities for synergy, leveraging differences in their energy resources, in their comparative advantages. Yes, GCC countries with their financial capital, as we discussed, can invest in Turkey's projects, but public-private partnership can also help to overcome some of the barriers that I mentioned during my opening remarks. Turkey can also share its know-how, technology know-how, adaptation roadmap, and energy efficiency mechanisms to advance this mutually beneficial partnership with the GCC. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for joining us today, for your comments and participation, and a big round of applause to our panelists as well. Thank you. I will now pass the microphone to Ala. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think you will see the barcode for our report.
As we conclude this discussion, I would like to express my gratitude to our respected speakers and audience. The shared knowledge and commitment showcased today highlight the importance of international collaboration. Let's continue working together for a more sustainable future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ala. Thank you.